Will removing institutional investors from the market actually help home buyers and sellers? I have a funny feeling it's not going to work out the way that a lot of us would think and hope for it to. And according to Business Insider, 2 to 3% of homes in the US are owned by large institutional investors. Large institutional investors are marked by individuals or companies that own 1,000 properties or more. But guess what? I don't sell homes across the nation. I sell homes in North Texas. And for today's video, I really want to focus on Fort Worth. According to FortWorthReport.org, in June 2024, the city of Fort Worth is sitting at 262,946 single-family homes. Now, out of all of those homes, 23% are owned by commercial individuals, be it a rental or something of that nature. And about 9.6% of that 23% are owned by institutional investors. The remainder of that 13 points, or the remainder of that 23, coming out to 13.7%, are owned by local landlords that live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I was curious, which districts have the most rentals in it? Because we all know in real estate, location is one of the most important factors. And I found that District 10 actually had the highest number of rental properties out of all the districts in Fort Worth. Now, we're looking at about 8,222 homes that are rentals versus a little under 32,000 which are owned by individuals. And out of that 25.72% of rental properties, well, 15.63% are institutional investors. So if you live in District 10, you let me know, do you feel like there's just a ton of rental properties in the neighborhood? And if you've bought in that area in the past 10 years, do you feel like you were competing with a lot of investors when you were submitting your offers? I was also curious what the council member and the city thought about this, because I would say that if you look at a national average of, let's say, 3% of corporate investments, and you look at here where it's anywhere from 25 to 15% of the rental properties are owned by institutional investors, I was genuinely curious what the council member thought. And the number one thing he felt that was affecting home values both locally and nationally is supply and demand, plus the cost builders face when developing new homes. He said since the pandemic, the cost of building homes has skyrocketed, which has driven up the cost of existing homes. He would expect that at the end of the day, the city and staff are both going to find ways to express concern about this. However, they feel that homeowners feel like it's a problem, but in their opinion, or his maybe, this isn't something that negatively impacts the cost of housing here in Fort Worth. Allen said that, very frankly, the cost and fees associated with building a home in Fort Worth are a lot more impactful than the negative impact it might have on individuals. He suggests that city council and staff explore ways to encourage new home development and work with building companies and associations to streamline the development process. I'm going to leave my opinion out of that, but I'll be honest, I don't necessarily agree with it. And here's my thoughts. The corporations use LLCs and other shell companies to protect themselves, so we truly don't know how many companies own homes. How many are mom and pops versus how many are these institutional investors? Because a company could own, let's say, 1,500 homes, and if they set up 50 LLCs and they put 30 properties in each LLC, well, then they're not going to be classified as that institutional investor then. And then depending on how they structure that LLC, if it's here locally, then it might look like it's just a mom and pop shop that lives here locally, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say here. Also, having multiple LLCs gives these companies tax benefits, and it also gives them financial benefits that makes it easier for them to compete against the true, let's say, local investors, if you will. So in conclusion, my thought is, how is the government going to help this? Well, I don't really think they are. And I really think that a lot of folks believe the government should just get out of the housing altogether. And if the government puts too much, I don't know what the word would be, but if they put too much hoops to jump through for investors to buy properties, what's going to happen is rent's going to go up. And then you'll see years down the road, the government will come in as the knight in shining armor to try to help with the home affordability, and they're going to build properties that are government assisted. And we all know that when they do things like this, it really affects or really benefits the developer more than it does the average individual that's going to be renting the property. So if you really want to combat this affordable housing situation that we're in, if you really want to keep properties out of the hands of these large corporate investors, I would encourage 3 groups of individuals to think about what they're going to do with their property before they actually sell it. So the first one is going to be just your average person. If you own a property and you're thinking about selling it, please try to sell it to that individual. Maybe try to sell it to that first-time home buyer that's looking to start building their equity through buying a property. If you're somebody that's towards the end of your rope in life and you know what, you just don't want to deal with the stress of the market, and it's so easy to just sell that house to that investor because you bought that home 10, 15, 20 years ago and you're sitting on a pile of equity. And like I said, it's going to be easy because you could just sell to that investor. I would strongly encourage you to try to pass it on to the next generation. And then the third group that I see that sells to investors more than a lot of people realize is when they inherit a property. There's a lot going on. Somebody's passed away. You're probably having to deal with family members that you haven't talked to in a while. I understand the convenience of selling to an investor, but I would strongly encourage you to try to pass it down to the next generation, those next individuals, those first-time home buyers, those people that are trying to find a home to build, or not build, but trying to find a home to raise their family in. That's the only way that we're going to combat this. Leaning on the government to fix this isn't going to help us long term. But I don't know, you tell me what you think. Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think it makes sense? Do you think Trump's move to block institutional investor is a good step to at least get the public moving in the right direction? Or do you think it was just a PR stunt? But that's the end of the video, folks. If you got some value out of it, the best compliment you can give me is a referral by sending this video to a friend and family member. And until next time, I hope you have an amazing day.